know, having a clear space that I can actually plant something new
Yeah.
besides weeds.
If it's green, it stays. That's kind of my philosophy.
You all right? Yeah.
Was that just last weekend? Was it?
Yeah. But like I said, they'll be back with what's left on the yard sale and book sale day.
Okay.
But when I started there, that garden was, talk about weeds. The only thing that came up were bulbs that the Girl Scouts had planted years before. It was the only colorful spot. So they've done, and that Dry Creek bed, and our little Veterans Memorial, and everything they did.
Well, do we want to go ahead and, does this meeting have to be officially called to order at 8 o'clock on the dot, or can we go ahead and,
It's a call meeting,
okay.
so.
We'll wait the additional 10 seconds.
Where's your trap?
Huh?
Where's your gravel?
I know, I don't even,
Oh, where's Campbell?
Use my head.
We use his coffee cup.
I can get that for you if you want.
no, I think we can probably make it without it.
Hey, before,
All right, it's called the budget workshop to order. There's no agenda before me here, so I assume we can kind of turn it over to Mike with the budget presentation to start with, I suppose. Is that kind of the idea? And then are you going to go through this? I mean, we've probably all seen this and read through it. I like it, by the way. It's really good.
Mr. Max, so this is a presentation, I think it probably just answers some of the questions that we've gotten over the past couple of weeks from several of you about the budget. And feel free to, as we go through this, we'll just feel free to interject. I think there's a moment, or a slide for the library, and Janet can address us as well. When we get through with that, Debbie had put together these books. I'm sure you're all familiar with them, but there were a couple questions, I think, in the second page of the book that we'll go through, just kind of general questions that you guys can talk about, and then if there's any other questions or discussion, we'll probably be done. I'll just walk you through this real quick. What you've got is the blue sheets in color here, and I'll just kind of walk through it. Some of this is going to look familiar from the ice cream, but you know, we kind of did a little bit differently. We wanted to ask questions or frame it into questions that you guys would have. We wanted context and information to be out there. I and staff don't take part in the political, answering the political questions here. We're just trying to give you some information. But I guess on the second page, on the third slide, after revenues, just wanted to give you a breakdown. This was from the other night as well. But there's 7 main types of revenues. The biggest chunk of revenues is that right pulled out slide, or right pulled out of that pie, the local taxes, and that's all stuff that's taxed locally here. So local sales tax. About half of that amount is property tax. And there's probably an over-reliance on property tax to fund government, but when you look at the pie of everything that's coming in, that is the biggest chunk, over 50%, and obviously the next biggest chunk is user fees for our sewer. If you look at how your revenues, the next slide, if you just look at how your revenues have trended, that's a 10-year trend, and the good thing is that everything is kind of a steady upward trend. You can see the spike in the fall in that top rate, that local taxes. Of course, that was kind of fluctuated on the economy, fluctuated on your tax rate, your local tax rate, and kind of did down with the recession. But, just kind of moving on to the next slide. What's in this year's budget? Overall, you've got a 1% growth rate. That is impacted a lot by the DICE team. I think, and the chief can speak to this a little bit as well, but I think we were trying or planning to end our participation in that unit, all the participants were. Obviously, that has a impact on our expenditures and an impact on our revenues. If you put the DICE team back in at when it was going well and we were seeing drug revenues, you'd be at like a 2.38% growth, so almost 2.4%. That's still a little bit, behind what the state was projecting in February, what the governor's budget was based on. But you're somewhere between 1% and 2.3% growth. There was room for growth because of the Dollar General that's being built. That picture on the left is the frame building from yesterday. We anticipated being open, by July 1, and then we kind of anticipate seeing those revenues shortly afterwards. I think if you've got any questions on what's included, Debbie put sales tax at around $1,500 a month for 8 months of next year's budget. So pretty good increase there. And then the stuffing in, there's no, I almost didn't believe it when we found out about it, but there was a little bit of, there's going to be a property tax increase, but they're not going to be selling things, so there's not going to be a sales tax. There's not a franchise tax because they're renting out their units. So there's nothing really taxable coming off of that other than property taxes, improving a lot, improving, your one penny on your property taxes. So there's not a lot of month-to-month taxes coming off that lot.
What do you think the property tax increase will be?
That's a good question.
It's how many acres?
I mean, it'll just be an improvement to the rate.
Well, you said there was 360 units, right?
So somewhere in that ballpark.
Over 300 units.
I'll see if I can dig into that a little bit. The proposed budget does not include a property tax increase. That's your book. It does not include a property tax increase. Obviously, that's something that you guys need to talk about and decide and give us some guidance on. It does include a 3% sewer rate increase. And of course, your sewer rate is different from your property taxes because it's a business fund, it's a business expense. So there's a business case to be made for rate adjustments. Just the next slide. You guys had asked me, or at least one of you had asked me about property taxes. From my perspective, there's kind of an over-reliance on property taxes to fund government. I think that's one of the challenges that I have in the next several years is trying to figure out how to grow the pie, grow the whole a little bit, and kind of fund government on more than just property taxes. For myself, and I think I've made this point clear to a couple of you, but property taxes should really be, if they're increased, they should be tied to something. You should have something to show for it. This is how most people do. I know Franklin just raised their property tax rate last spring, but they did it because they were implementing a new pavement management, residential pavement program that they were doing. But it should be about some capital maintenance program, some new asset, or some kind of expansion of service we should be able to tie a property tax increase to. And then on the left-hand side of that slide, you can see the rates for the neighboring jurisdictions. Those are current. And of course, Belmead and Bellevue are kind of a special circumstance. They stand out with being in the metro.
What are we at, 0.91?
0.92.
I've got my tax saving, I don't know, was it 0.91 or 92 or 93? Right now. 0.91 according to the tax map. So, quite a bit over already, somewhere we're adjoining places, aren't we?
I can tell you that, that tax rate is really, there's no magic wand to it. It's really kind of whatever you feel you need to fund government. And government means different things in different places. So, I mean, I'm sure we have some services that, Burns may not. And likewise, Bell Mead probably has some services that we don't have. So it means different things. But you're right, we do fit in this realm, closer to Dixon, obviously. And then, of course, just kind of wrapping up about property taxes, the political question, do you raise, why, and how much? And then the thing that I had asked, at least a couple of you, was, is it $1, because you're at 91 now, so you're closing in on $1. Is $1 a major limit or a barrier in the minds of folks here? That was my question. So it's something to think about. Just kind of the next slide on spending, what we are spending on. This slide came out of the ice cream social as well, but what we're spending it on is anything and everything, but personnel is the blown out kind of chunk of that pie. 34% you're spending on personnel. Typically that is the largest expense. You think about running a business or doing something else, you're going to spend money on your people more than you are on almost everything else. 34% is an excellent number, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is based on the services that are provided. I don't want to say you guys are at a skeleton staff, but you certainly don't have extra people sitting on their hands all day. So that's one reason for that. The other thing to note is 34% is great for the fact that our staff is kind of long-term. I think I'm sitting in the ice cream social. I'm by far the shortest timer here by several years. So the fact that everyone's kind of vested, they've been here, and they've been through increases. That 34% is really good. I was surprised when I found it. Like I said, it's not unusual. I think in Clifton we were like 45% was personnel, and it's not unusual to have places like bigger places like Metro and all. It's not unusual to have half, 60% of your expenses be on personnel. And this is actually a really good mix because I think purchase services, capital outlay, they're all about a third of the pie. Operating and capital outlay. So this is actually a really good blend of what we're spending on. The next slide, just what's being proposed. I just wanted to give you a sense of, and this is in your green book, but by fund. That was the spending for last year's budget, and then the spending for this year's budget, and then the change. You could see that big old dip in drug enforcement fund. Obviously, that's tied to the DICE team. But everything else is roughly the same or a little bit less. Sewer fund, we had some capital expenditures that we wanted to replace a pump station, and then there was an equipment thing that we'll talk about in a second that kind of spiked out a little bit. But overall, we're kind of treading water. This next slide, you can see just kind of visually what the difference is by department. So you've got it by fund on the top, by department on the bottom. The next slide, how is spending trended over 10 years? It's trended upward. If you had to put a trend line in there, it would be a slight increase every year, but it really kind of tied in with your revenues as well. If you kind of put the overlay, the revenues over the spending, it's that same gradual increase. The blue on the bottom with the numbers, that is general fund spending, and you can see how that has kind of moved in the past 10 years.
That's a great graph.
So the next thing, this was the big takeaway from the ice cream social. This is that $1. What where does my $1 go? If any residents ask you, I give the city, all this, tax revenue or fees or whatever, where does it go to? This is the answer to that. But for, this body and this purpose this morning, which departments are we spending on? That's, the general government, that's everything from boards to attorney to me to clerks. You can see code enforcement is just a small sliver of that. Public safety, just like how personnel expenditures were the big driver typically, public safety is typically the big driver in most cities. That 27 number is great. It really is. It's not unusual to see the same, 45–50% of cities' budgets spent on fire and police. I think there's a couple reasons to that. One is the fact that we don't have overnight police protection through our department. That's an efficiency in my mind, and I know the chief probably thinks of it the same way because the call volume for overnight folks. And I don't know, I just think it's an efficiency. But that's the big takeaway from the ice cream social, and that's where your dollar goes, if any residents ask.
I'd like to ask you about the public works and public utilities. Runs at 39% versus the public safety.
That's all funds, so if you think that sewer, you regularly spend about $500,000 on sewer expenses for just about anything. That's the biggest chunk of public works. Now you also have like road, you could do $100,000 and $200,000 in paving projects a year. But your roads and then your sewer pipes in the ground, obviously it's the biggest physical thing in the city, the biggest asset that the city has. But it's the biggest expense as well. Okay, and then I had a question on personnel spending. I just wanted to kind of give you a highlight of the base salaries and also the benefits. You guys may know this better than I do, but I just wanted to give you from a high level view, and then the next slide is kind of a granular view of what we're spending on salaries. Our health insurance, and we do have two health insurance options for employees. That's 73 on the very top slide under health insurance. There's $7,300. There's a premium there that's for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and there's a $7,500 premium that is for Cigna. Both of those are provided through the state's health plan. We do give folks a cell phone allowance, retirement, state retirement, and that's the 7.12 is what the town contributes to retirement. 5% is what employees contribute, and then there's an unemployment insurance, which is roughly $21.70 per employee. That retirement, I think we're fully funded in retirement, aren't we? So we are fully funded with the state. Some notes, the 16 budget does call for, so this is already planned in the spending that we just talked about, 3% increase in your base salaries for city employees. Just want to let you know 12 of 15 employees, not every employee, but 12 of 15 employees participate in the cell phone allowance. Chief Ivy does receive 2 phone allowances, and him and I, we both talked about it last week, but I think there's some history to that, some precedent for it, so that's the reason why that exists. Several of you probably already know that. And then also, there was a ruling from the board in 1996 that employees that were hired before 96 receive 100% health insurance coverage for themselves and then 80% coverage for their families. I think that's the way the town used to operate, and then they switched it in 96, and there was some will of the board to carry that forward for employees. And we've only got two survivors from 96. So that's what that is. And then the very last note were the health insurance premiums. I wanted to break that down for you. The very next slide is explaining all of that, and that's kind of per employee, and then what the what the breakdown is. I was asked to provide that information specifically. It's fine, it's public information, it's not something that's gonna go in the public, or in the budget document when we publish it. It's absolutely, anybody can just roll up to City Hall and ask for it. I'll tell you, I've been asked for it once by an elected official, gave it to the whole board in paper, and there's like this gossip website called Topics, Topix, if you've ever heard of that. But in Clifton, it was how all the rednecks talk to each other, and anonymously. So this appeared with everybody's name and their salary on Topics the next morning. I was disgusted. The point is that this is public information, absolutely accessible. It's not something that I publish, and I hope that it's not used for purposes of evil. So I can just tell you that. The next slide is the library, and I think Janet Walker is with us here. But just kind of quickly, you guys had asked me about the library. We give an $8,500 subsidy included in and it's included in this year's budget. Just in talking with Janet, I think the library's annual budget is somewhere around $100,000. 80% of the patrons of her library are Kingston Springs residents, and when we say Kingston Springs, we're talking about the ranchettes and surrounding areas, that sort of thing. You asked me to ask her if Pigram contributed, and they have once. But they're not, annually asked to. And around, the bulk of our money goes to purchase materials. The last thing, this is why the subsidy is important for her, is that it qualifies her for a maintenance of effort. And if you've ever heard that term, what it means for her, at least, is that it qualifies her for state grants. It allows her staff to receive training for free. And then it's half off, any technology service or device or something she would need. And Janet, if you would like to say anything else.
Well, can I hand something out, because I kind of, I have enough for everybody. But I kind of was going through thinking about what all the state does for us, and the reason, and I think Gary might be the only one that's ever heard this this talk, if you will, because everybody else is pretty new, and I recognize most everybody. But this is just, all these little bullet points are everything that the state does do for us. And actually, 40% of our collection is state-owned. Now, one of the things that the state, do I need to stand behind the podium? Can I float around? Because the state, the maintenance of effort is something that the state put forth to make sure that all libraries, especially small ones, are always funded by the county and town that they're located in. So they kind of use what they give us as incentive for the communities to do that. And I just kind of went through, and to be perfectly honest, I've even thought of a couple of other things since I made this yesterday. But, so anytime you go to my library and look at a book, if the barcode begins with a 5, it's owned by the state. If it begins with a 3, we own it, and it was bought with funds from the county as well as the town. This year, the state gave me over $9,100 for books. So, that's a big chunk of any operating cost on books. Reads, those of you that know about our little regional, it's and audiobook downloads. In the first quarter of this year, we had, for our small library, over 1,400 downloads. My husband goes, I was 20 of those, I think, but that used to be annual. It's quadrupled in the last 5 years. So I think that's pretty exciting. And that's all free, and that's all provided by the state for free. Tennessee Electronic Library, 70 databases. One that's really neat is the test prep. Had a young man that's a junior here at Harpeth, and he's been coming to the library, since he was a child, and he said he needed to raise his ACT scores. I said, well, go to the Tennessee Electronic Library for free. You can practice. They have all the prep stuff and then practice tests, all for free. And he's like, we just bought the ACT. I said, they didn't tell you about it. They told me at the high school they tell you about this. So that was a really, and I told him, you can do it here at the library, you can do it at home. If you have any problems, please come see me, and I'll go over it with you. So the big one, the LSTA grant, that's our library services and technology. They do pay for half, it's matching funds, we get reimbursed, so I just got the check from the state for about $1,200. We have 4 new public access computers. And by the way, for those of you, I know you, most of you know Corey Foster. Corey is on our library board, so I really appreciate him being here. Corey has done the library's website for years. He approached us a few years ago and said he'd like to do that for us. So he's already had a vested interest in us. And so thank you for coming, Corey. But these are all some of the things that they have paid for half of. And this coming fiscal year, when we apply, I'm going to ask for a couple of Chromebooks to replace 2 old computers. If I know Glenn was there for our Jan Brett visit. We had a famous children's author come. We had what? 300, maybe I shouldn't say all that, but we had a lot of people, and we have a set of desks or tables in the very center of our small library. Well, I had them removed, and it took getting our state IT guy to come and take everything apart, then we moved the tables, then he had to come and set it all back up. So I had the idea if we had a couple of Chromebooks there, my staff and I could move those. And when we do, especially summer reading, if y'all have never been by the library during summer reading program, it's a neat thing to see. We have so many come. It's wonderful. And so we just really enjoy that. So a couple of Chromebooks, because most of our patrons do just get on the internet. We'll still have 8 public access computers for printing and anything else that they might need to do. And I think that will be adequate. And I'm going to, Craig hasn't even heard this one yet. It'll be at the meeting next week. But this is T-Mobile Hotspot. And we're going to do a pilot program to have one T-Mobile device that can be checked out. We haven't decided yet, 1 week or 3 weeks, but you can basically check out Wi-Fi. And it's only $28.70 a month, no contract to sign, and they'll even buy back the device if you decide you don't want to continue it. So we're kind of excited about that's something kind of new. We have a lot of patrons that do not have internet. And if there's a paper that you need to research and you can't always be at the library at our hours, you can do that. And of course, our Wi-Fi is on 24/7. So you can pick it up in our parking lot, on the front porch, and the churches, the preschool across the street. I mean, it can be picked up in a lot of areas. It's pretty strong. So, yeah, all of our computer training and our information technology. Corey laughs and he says every time he comes to the library, Derek is there working on our computers if we need anything. In fact, he'll be here tomorrow, all day, updating everything. Yeah, so an interesting statistic, when I just did April's circulation, we circulated 540 DVDs. So, and right now we're limiting people to 5 per household. So I said, what if we took that limitation off to 5, maybe 5 per card? Would it double? So I don't know. But it is hard. I mean, unless you can afford Netflix, or I don't know where you would go, a Redbox in Bellevue or something. I don't know where you would get it in a DVD to rent. So we try to have that. I'm state certified by the state. That was a program that cost $100 for the 2-year program. So that was a greatly reduced price. And I guess the most important is that not meeting MOE, which did happen a few years ago, and I couldn't apply for any grants that year because that was one question that they asked on the grant is MOE. And actually, something that y'all need to know too is that I have a responsibility with the maintenance of effort to spend all of my appropriated money. And I've told the board this, and I tell you this, I take that really seriously, spending taxpayer money. I told somebody, I said, you can look at my shelves and you know that I do not only buy what I like to read. I mean, there is every genre just about that I think my patrons are going to want to read, movies to watch. The services we try to anticipate needs, like things like having T-Mobile hotspots and things like that. And so I really take it very seriously, so I hope you know that when you appropriate money to the library, that I'm spending it with the library and our patrons in mind. And And it really is, and I spend a lot of time, I make lists, like a wish list, and things get crossed off of it because I decide I need something else more. So, really important stuff, and yes, in fact, I put the statistic down for the 2014-2015 fiscal year. Our budget for our library is $101,175. So, and I just spoke at the last week, I guess, at the Cheatham County budget meeting, mostly just telling them what we're doing. One of the things that we want to do is a surveillance system. So I've got to call into Ken Whitaker with Mike Breedlove's office about coming out and talking to us. We had a break-in. It was a minor break-in, but we're at the library a lot alone. Usually I'm there for a little while in the morning, but our closing staff is usually there by themselves. And so, you know, even small towns, especially being located so close to a big town, and we're so close to the freeway. And people come to libraries looking for all kinds of things, especially because we're between two churches. So we refer a lot of people to the ARC. Gasoline money is the big one they come asking us for. So we've been very pleased. Pastor Carty is really good. So I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Because I really want you to feel good about supporting the library. And the library was Kingston Springs. How many were around for the homecoming project in the 80s? Oh, I'm sorry, I was a teacher. You know, raise your hand. But in the 80s, our library was built as a homecoming project. So people come in all the time that watched it being built, helped build it. The logs were donated by Pioneer Logs. And so the county leases the building from the town. And it's, what, $1 a year. Debbie and I were talking about this. She sent me over a copy of the lease agreement. But the agreement, of course, is that Cheatham County will maintain it. And we did get the lawn mowed. Mike said, what about the lawn? Bill King, who teaches at the high school, has mowed our lawn and the Methodist Church lawn for, I want to say decades, certainly 15 to 20 years, for free, every week. And he's injured his back. And he just simply could not do it anymore. So one day when the people that the church had hired were mowing, I went out and I got his card. And I called maintenance, and maintenance will say, yes, we'll be out, but we had all that rain. They have a very small staff, made up of a lot of prisoners, and it depends on who's in jail at the time. But they have so much to take care of, they did contract with them. So that's $30 a time that the maintenance pays for. It does not come out of my budget, it comes out of maintenance. And they've had all these years of not having to do it. And of course, our parking lot is totally maintained by the Church of Christ. So that's it's a great community thing to have that. Yes?
What percentage does the county pay? How much does the county pay?
For,
The budget, your budget?
well, it's $101,000 a year. So that's it. That is we are a county department. So I am the head of that department. And so our major funding is all from the county, with the state throwing in money as well as the town. And that's kind of what maintenance of effort's all about, is towns and counties also having ownership of the library and funding it. And the thing about that is that they want to see it stay the same or possibly more. Usually the county budget goes up a little bit. It might be my step raise. Generally it is. I submitted a status quo budget this year. Last year, I actually submitted for the ability to pay some of my part-time a little bit more. I have 3 ladies that have been here longer than I have, and I've been here maybe 8 years this summer.
Is there, you have a fee which you charge for a member, to be a member of the library, $25 a year? Is that?
That's a friend of the library.
Friend of the library.
That's a friend of the library, and a lot of, in fact, the surveillance that we're talking about getting, just, you know, a couple of cameras or something, the friends are going to pay for.
Okay, so that's a wholly different.
That is a completely different entity, and there are benefits to being a friend of the library. Besides supporting all of our programs, they completely pay for our whole summer reading program, anything and everything, but they paid for our doors. When that building was put up, it was, I think, a house plan, and all the doors opened in. And that used to really, that bothered me a lot that those doors opened in. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we put doors that have the breaker bars and they open out, and much safer, double doors on the front porch, single door on the back porch. So the Friends do everything above and beyond what my budget allows me to do. And that's usually in the tens of thousands, or well, thousands of dollars. I think it was about $4,500 to do the doors.
Thank you.
Just to keep moving it on, is there anything else for Janet while she's here?
Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want you, like I said, I want you to feel really, really good. I think we meet a lot of the needs of our community. You mentioned Pegram, and I just want to bring that up. It's not that I have not courted Pegram, but we're not in Pegram. And, you know, I was at a number of their town council meetings. They did allocate some money they had left over from something else, and that's when we got the 1,000. And if I remember right, and I could look back at my records, I think that all went to buying books. So generally, and at the end of the year, if I have line items that still have money left over in them, I move it all to books. And I spend about $20,000 annually on books. So, books and material.
I think the concern with Pegram was just, you know.
Well, it'd be
You know,
nice.
it would be nice, it would be nice. I know that Pegram's got a little bit different budget situation than we do, but, you know, when you think about it, Pegram's closer than the Ranchettes. You know, so.
Unfortunately, we're out of sight, out of mind.
Corey can attest to that personally.
Well, and we do have some of our very, very faithful patrons that use us regularly live in Pegram, and they're the names you would all recognize because they're the ones active at the schools. Elizabeth Strunk will be at my library tomorrow from the Pegram Pre-K doing a field trip, and all of the first grade from Kingston Springs will be at the library next Monday for a field trip, and I think they'll be all downtown. Tonight, Debbie Martin is doing a presentation for Jared's Keepers on suicide, and we have a financial education workshop Monday. And so, there's something nearly every evening. We're open till 8. We've got something happening.
Well, thanks to Janet for coming. Unless you guys have anything else, just the next slide here. Take a second. This is the green sheet that was at the Ice Cream Social. This is a list of all of the new projects, new spending in this year's budget. See what you think about that. If you have any questions, staff is here. If there's anything that you like or you don't like or you want to ask us about, we're there for that. And we'll do for that. The last thing is just kind of a new submission, something since the Ice Cream Social. I think we had spent a lot of time with Mike Bowers recently. And Clint would want to tell you, there's a picture on this slide on the bottom of page 8. But it's, they had asked for a mini excavator, or at least looking into getting on next year's budget. There was we found a vendor on the state contract that's near us and got a price of somewhere around $70,000 to do it. There was a capital maintenance line item in the sewer fund of $100,000 for a sewer pump kind of maintenance issue. We said $100,000. I think we found out that there was going to be like $50,000 that was going to be the cost. So you've got a lot of that's already budgeted for capital outlay for next year.
So I take it this is a request because we've been using someone's service quite a lot. I suppose with the down in Harvard Meadows and.
Yeah, just probably in the past month, where the sewer break and just cleaning ditches and parks, we probably spent $5,000 a month.
You could use that to put salt in the back of the store.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't do that. But we've had a contract for 2 years, and 99% of the time, this is all we ask for. This piece of equipment.
I know that all the work he's done in the park in the last 2 years, that's the only piece of equipment he's brought to use.
We've never asked for anything else. But he's got the contract for dozers and loaders.
One question I have, you got several streets here that you've asked for paving. Driving on those streets, they need ditching more than before you even start paving them. There's some that just got no ditches at all. Ditches, as you well know, is a cause of asphalt not maintaining, because water freezes under and cracks and breaks them, then Could this be beneficial in something, or you have the capabilities, or the manpower, that
Yeah,
the operator that can operate this machine, is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
mean, just
asking.
having it on hand, I mean, now if we call them, we have to hurry up, because you know, you're paying by the hour. You know,
Right.
and you get towards the end of the day, you may not finish, you don't wanna call them out a whole nother day for 45 more minutes of work, so if we have it on hand, we can work at our pace, and
Do you have an operator, is what I'm asking?
I could do it myself,
Okay.
yeah.
This wraps up spending. Are there any other questions about spending or the projects, or any other questions from staff or what they've submitted? Okay, moving on, just to fund balance, and these last slides were verbatim from the ice cream social. Fund balance, I just want to let you know that we have a regulatory requirement to keep a fund balance to fund government for up to 60 days. For us, and this is all funds, this is sewer and all of our governmental funds, that means about $375,000 is what we have to keep on hand. We meet that, we exceed that. That's not a problem for us. There are two types of fund balance. They're reserved and unreserved, and just means that it's dedicated. There's a listing on the right-hand side of that slide for what is dedicated or reserved fund balance. And there is a political question. This is just something to think about and you know, articulate if you choose. But how much money do you want to keep and sit on versus how much money do you just want, you know, your residents to have? That's a question that, you know, every board across the state, across the country deals with. When we talk about taxing, you know, where is it more efficient to be, in the hands of the residents or in the hands of really, you know, the town's bank account? So that's something to think about. Moving on, what is your fund balance trend? I'm going to tell you that this probably tells you the least of any of the trending slides that you've got, and it's because of accounting. The sewer fund, which is that top line, that $2.7 million line, you have a lot of cash, which you carry as fund balance, but you also have a lot of capital assets, and because that's a business account, literally a business can fold, right? But a government can't. So your business account, you can fold and give up your sewer license tomorrow, but you have all these assets that you, in theory, could sell off, and that's everything from a vehicle to the pipes that are in the ground to, you know, just anything, pumps and all that stuff. So that $2.7 million is more than cash. It's also, you know, all those capital assets, and you can see the other funds. I think adequate facilities is kind of getting bled dry, but I mean, it's the smallest of everything. Moving on to debt. I said in the ice cream social, this is great. If there's anything that you got to be proud about, it's debt, really. You've got $2.1 million out for the life of all the city's debt obligations. Per capita is just the amount of debt owed per resident, per child, per taxpayer, per everything. That's $775. That's fantastic. You typically see $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 in debt obligations. And just to kind of look on the next slide, you're 10 years away from being completely debt-free. That's a 10-year graph, but that's it. And you see capital and or you see principal and interest laid out. You're about 3 years away. You're at 15 now. You're voting on 16, and so you're three budgets away from knocking a big chunk of that off. But nobody is 10 years away from being debt free. So, so that's fantastic. And then the last thing is everything else. So this last question is, what about Debbie? I want her to take you through the booklet questions and just kind of have general discussion, and then that's all I have. What about Debbie?
What about Debbie? What I said. I don't have anything unless you all have some questions for me.
We do have the booklet questions. We're with Bob and all of us. We're able to get together earlier in the month and last month and discuss these questions as the budget committee. But of course, we need kind of input from everybody, I think, to kind of get an idea where we stand on some of these things, so if you want to guide us through those questions, or if everyone's read these questions, I take it, and probably just mark down some notes on what their thoughts are. Let's kind of open it up for that kind of general discussion, because it isn't, the main point of this meeting is to figure out kind of where we are on the budget for this year, and what we want to do, and what changes we do and don't want to do, so.
I think I got just a few questions, and I think these are pointed questions, but I noticed that we do, and it's been a trend, that we have to do a lot of amendments to the budget throughout the year for various reasons. And sometimes those amendments come in different situations, and I think one of the budgets we approved, and it was in the print, was the city manager gave some merit raises to certain people before, during last budget year. And I'm just wondering what the city's position is on merit raising versus straight across the board raises. And then the other thing would be, as I looked at this situation, I did ask for the employee information, first time that I've seen it, and it gives you a better idea of that, the fact that we do have some long-standing employees, because we are providing really, really good benefits. Health insurance, as you know, is completely through the roof. Retirement is very important to me, because being self-employed, I left a job many years ago. If I'd have stayed there and put up with the crap, then I would have been retired with benefits, So I think they realize, or should realize, the importance of that, of what they're being provided. And I think, that's the reason that we have this long tenure here, through different boards and different administrations, and how they voted, how they felt. But I just, I like to look at situations where we don't constantly have to amend a budget to make up for something we didn't maybe see in the beginning. Does that make sense? And I think that this job that you have done together, collectively, and primarily you, Debbie, has shown me that you are good stewards of the city's money. And for the library's presentation, there's no way in the world I wouldn't vote for that, because my daughter from Nashville brought her 2 children in when they were staying with me, and it was just, they were treated like residents, they were treated like members, and which they did get their cards. So it's just basically to say thank you, but also looking at the 1%, I would like to see this body, if we could, not have a tax increase. If it looks like we are in a position to not have a tax increase in 1 year, just to more or less put a statement to the residents. We are trying to enhance some commercial growth in the dollar store. We're trying to get some new things here, and this might bring some other people into our area and do a little bit more. I realize that we are doing more business in Kingston Springs, the citizens. If you go to Sky King on Friday or Saturday night, you realize that there are some businesses happening. And I just think for 1% or 2% for $12,000, $6,000, we're not sending the right message to go along with the tax increase. So I'm against a tax increase, because the budget will sustain itself without a tax increase. And I'd rather see us put money on equipment and things that we need, to not spend money and throw it out the back door or out the side door and it never comes back. So training for our employees is important. Education, your degrees that you have are tremendous, and I thank you for that individual effort. But that's all I have to say about the budget. I just want to thank you for giving us a complete picture of, I do like revenues. I do think we need to put things in reserve as much as we possibly can, and I think you have done a good job of presentation to us this morning.
Mr. Mayor, just kind of piggybacking off those comments, Debbie and I have talked about budget amendments, and one of the things that I'd like to do is get us down to maybe one end of the year budget amendment, and it just I don't know, that's something that I noticed when I came on as well, and I think that's something that we're gonna try to change kind of moving forward.
Well, the reason, I tell you, the reason that those come about is because, you know, state law says you can't spend the money unless it's been appropriated. Now, most cities do, and we have always done that in the past, is you all make amendments throughout the year, you know, something comes up and you wanna amend the budget, and we go ahead during the meeting and have you all approve it. But then usually I'll just do an amendment at year end. But this particular time, there was big dollars. I mean, when you were talking about salaries and this, that, and other, the dollar amount was too much not to have you all appropriate it and us go forward. I mean, auditor could slap our hands on that. So that's why we do that.
Yeah, this year was unusual with the change of the head of the city and different things.
Right.
I understand. But that's just, in my opinion, in the future, if we could look at
And it's fine too. I prefer it just now. It's a lot of
it.
work.
It looks a whole lot better from an outside standpoint looking in, that we took the time to sit down and make some good decisions when we prepared the budget, when we approved it, as opposed to just slap, rubber stamping it, so to speak.
Two other things. I do think there are some opportunities for other revenues. Two things that come to my mind is whenever we decide if we want to do something on liquor, and then the other opportunity is we get $0 out of these hotels. There's a county hotel tax. There is not a city hotel tax, and that's a tough row to hoe, so to speak, in getting that set up. But if that's something you're interested in, I'll probably look to circle. I'll probably look to talk to you individually about it, and then circle around to it in the fall when the General Assembly gets back in session. But that is an opportunity for funding as well.
Well, and the hotel taxes are usually popular because your residents don't pay them. So,
and then the third thing was I sent this feedback out. It was just a memo feedback from the Ice Cream Social. One of the things that one of the takeaways, you mentioned the downtown district. That is, this downtown needs some love, and that was one of the comments that we got from the Ice Cream Social. So you put the picture together, try to find some other revenue sources, try to grow your downtown. It all kind of becomes clear. That's all I have.
Well, unless anybody else has any comments, I just need you all to answer the questions. Just let me know
answer
so
the questions.
I can proceed with the budget.
All right, well, the first question is on the property tax. That's kind of the big question every year. We're all aware of the history on it. I believe a few years back there was a major increase to the property tax, which caused a lot of controversy in the town, and as a result, there's been just kind of incremental increases over the past few years to kind of help compensate for the increase in costs. This year's unique because we have another major source of sales tax coming, so it's maybe not as necessary unless we want to just kind of continue on that trend of kind of maintenance of increase. So I'd like to hear some thoughts from the rest of the board. I kind of got
I know I've talked a whole lot, but here's the thing that I did not find out until we went to retreat. I don't think the board really realized it at that time as far as I came on, but I said here in the audience is the liquor tax. The liquor tax would more than offset even the 2%. And we spent money with legal fees and city attorney fees and all that, and that's another issue that I think we can curb too. To get these ordinances ready to go, and then we didn't realize the magnitude. And that's like a 2% increase or more. It was like, what, 15,000, 16,000?
I think it was around 18.
18,000. So you're looking at more than the 2%. You're looking at probably a 3-point-something% just in that one phase that we listened to a couple people, but we were looking at a couple people versus the entire town. So I think that's one thing we could look at, and I think that's a very important thing. Plus, I agree with Tony on the hotel tax. Man, if I go into anywhere, it's a tax, and it's tremendous tax. It's added right onto my bill. So Yeah, I agree. I think we need to look at that situation, and they need to pay their way. So, so that's my comments, and I voted no on the property tax increase. Rest of them can give you how they want to vote.
Yeah, let's hear from everybody on the question.
I'd like to see us try to avoid it if we can. If we can avoid it, that'd be great. If we need it, as minimal as possible. But seeing how we're dropping down debt in the next few years, we might be looking pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The part of the reason, excuse me, that we kinda had that on every year was, one thing was because of the cost of living, was kinda figured, and also keep our reserve up in case we did have a disaster or something, which has helped us several times, having money in reserve for that. And, yeah, I'm for it, but if we can do the liquor thing or something else, then I would be, I'm willing to go along with the rest of you. You know, if we can get that 1 or 2% somewhere else. But, the cost of living is a big thing, you know, paving and everything else, so asphalt goes up, gasoline goes up, which is down now, but, you know, that was what we intended by adding a 1 or 2% every year, you know. So, next.
I'm against property tax increase. I think we can generate enough sales tax from Dollar General. I think we definitely need to pursue the liquor tax, and we need to pursue the hotel tax. There was another thing, the property tax for the storage buildings. I mean, we're looking, if we increase property tax by 1 cent, we generate $6,500, right? I would venture a guess that that would be the property tax for that facility.
I have no idea.
I mean, so you're offsetting 1% just for that. So I'm against property tax.
Okay. John's call, I just need to know.
Well, yeah, it really looks like that's kind of the will of the board. The only danger that I see in not doing that, I think the options we have before us here to really go after some other revenue sources is great. I hadn't even thought about the hotel tax as an option, and that's really, you know, I think it would be great, because really we have the only hotels in the county to speak of, and they're the only ones that are accessible from the interstate. So the fact that we derive no revenue from that, but the county does, is pretty almost absurd. So, you know, that's kind of the will of the board. Maybe this year we don't do a property tax increase. My only reason I caution anyone on this is it's one of those things, if you don't do it, you might have to be forced to make a really unpopular decision at some point down the road, when maybe some of these other revenue sources don't work out and we still need to maintain city revenues. So, but it looks like, you know, this is a unique year, so we can maybe not do that this year.
So I'm assuming that's a no, since Gary's either way, Glenn's either way, and there's 3 no's. So your next question is about the sewer rates. You know, we've always increased that 3% every year. The budget reflects that 3%. And we just do that because we want to stay ahead of the wastewater board. We do not want them to come in here.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Gary, you okay with that?
Yeah.
The sewer pays the general fund and in lieu of tax. And in the past, that money, that revenue that's been generated, has always been put in a reserve fund. So I just need to know if that's what you want me to do again, or if you want it just to go into the general fund.
Absolutely.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
and that there's a 3% increase for salaries for employees. So I need to know if you want to leave that, or if you wanna change it, you wanna remove it.
Are these figures showing the 3% that this
Yes.
slide shows?
Yes.
I'm yes on that.
Yes.
I'm yes on that. Bob, Gordon?
I didn't, is everybody said?
Oh, I said that I said yes, I just didn't hear.
No, I didn't hear Bob, are you?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Okay, yes.
Yes. Glenn?
Yes, yes.
all right, so
I'm not gonna get beat.
And then you received, a request for donation of $1,500 to the Art for Meals on Wheels.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
And you also received, and I gave you copies of that, a donation request from Transit Alliance
No.
of Middle Tennessee.
No.
No.
I don't know anything about them, first time we've ever been solicited by them.
Did you have any thoughts on that?
Bob Stoner's retirement. Just give me a little start.
And then the last question was if you want to continue the $8,500 line item.
Yes.
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 Well, that's all I need.
That's it?
Unless there's any additional questions or additional discussion, city staff is here if you have anything.
I guess my question is, what goes from here about the paving and the different line items that everybody was requesting? I know that Bob and Tony met in with a committee, so do they just bring that up at the first meeting? You know, what happens in that situation? I know that you're trying to get it approved through before the end of June, the budget itself. There was a couple line items that I don't know that I seen on here concerning the lighting at the farmer's market that we hadn't really didn't even vote on or anything.
The lighting is in there.
The lighting, yeah, or the electricity's in the budget. So
But it turned out to be 3,000 instead of the original 1,800 that we had talked about at retreat, right?
2403 is what it says here.
Yeah.
So these are all budget right here.
Right.
Let me get from there, but, and I just based that upon a proposal that Lori had been given by the electrician. It may be less than that.
Have we as a town talked to the main body at Dixon Electric and said to them, the main guy, here's what we're looking at, can you do something for us? Can you assist us? Because I mean,
Lori have the electrician.
in temporary poles and things of this nature, there are certain costs if you're building and
Yes.
whatever.
Yep.
But in all the in the charitable situations, like for schools and athletic programs and all in the past, Dixon has been very positive.
Yep.
They have a real good engineering department that is second to none as far as I'm concerned in coming out and seeing just exactly what you have to have, or can we do something as a drop. You know, I'm just looking to save money, you know, because we're only using it just a short period of time. I was at a farmer's market last week and they were using dry ice and they were using different things instead of electricity. But, you know, I don't have a problem. It just seems like that figure is so out of kilter here that even for me to put a permit or temporary out there at my house when it was built, I didn't have anything like that in cost. So I'm just looking at maybe we need to make another attempt.
I can tell you where the number comes from. The number comes from the electrician's estimate and then 12 months of a electric bill from
Well,
Dixon.
maybe we need to look at another electrician.
But the electric bill is $15 a month.
That's right. Well,
So, yeah.
I think
That's a minimum.
Yeah.
Well, but,
Depending no, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, that's,
Yeah, so.
that's negligible. Christ, you're only using it for 4 hours.
I would like to at least try it one more time to see. I mean, even though it's budgeted, we don't have to spend it if we get it last, you know.
I'm working with them right now on Christmas lights, so
Okay.
I'll have that conversation.
Well, that's a good thing to work together.
And of course, Christmas lights is something they've been good on. I
Right.
guess, But not charging us.
I'll raise the question.
And I think it's just setting another jack down on, you know, just dropping one day, you know.
And that is what it comes down to, I guess. And hopefully we'll find more use over the years for it besides just a farmer's market too, now that this is a park. But I think that's definitely a worthy thing to look into.
That was my question about the dollars.
Yeah.
All of these projects are funded in the budget.
Okay.
That's on here, they've all already been incorporated into the budget.
And I was very impressed that you were able to budget for and the numbers, how they came out on the streets, on the repaving projects. We're hitting every goal on the paving plan, basically, for this year, aren't we?
Clint and I were as well. We got an engineering estimate, and it was kind of reasonable.
The 8,000 on Harpeth Meadows that was in the budget here, I thought we already had that money set aside from last year.
You did, in the current budget that you're in, you all had moved 24,000 from the reserve fund
Okay.
to do additional paving, but the paving came in so much less than what we had anticipated, that we haven't moved any of that. And we got the proposal in to finish the Harpeth Meadows, and it came in at 30-something, like, I don't remember exactly what. So it looks like we're only gonna have to use about 8,000 of that 24.
Okay, that's way, okay, I understand that then, so, but they're coming in at the same figure that they bid it on last year is what we were told last year that they were gonna do it for this year, even though that it was a different year, they were gonna honor the same quote
Oh,
price.
yeah, that's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm waiting on a phone call any day for them to
That's fine,
tell us they're coming.
that's fine.
Should happen this month.
I'm just trying to understand a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's okay.
Was there anything else? We have to adjourn this meeting, do we?
Yes. And, all right, so now that we're adjourned, this, you got yellow folders. Those are the 8 applications
Oh,
for
great,
city attorney. Take a look at them, and on the May meeting, we'll have a thing. I could get with you individually.
Yes.
But see who you like and see how many you want to interview.
All right, well, meeting adjourned.
Any changes to this packet that you all want? Does it answer your questions?
Yeah, well, my nothing's
You okay
great.
with it?
I'm good.
I was planting a tomato plant by the chicken coop, and